Madison, my daughter-in-law of 7 years, slammed her designer handbag on my granite countertop with such force that my coffee mug rattled in its saucer. "I'm done playing nice, Eleanor," she hissed, her perfectly manicured finger jabbing toward my face. "Sign the house over to Darren and me, or you'll never see Lily and Mason again. I mean it." I set down my mug slowly, my hand steadier than I expected. At 63 years old, I'd survived my husband's death, raised a son on a teacher's salary, and built a life in this house that meant everything to me. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared me for the venom in my daughter-in-law's eyes. She snapped. "You're old. You don't need all this space. We have 2 growing kids who deserve a yard, a real home, not that cramped townhouse we're stuck in because you're being selfish." I looked at her, really looked at her, and something inside me shifted. I was done. "Get out of my house, Madison," I said, my voice calm but cold. "Before we continue, please subscribe and hit that notification bell, and let us know where in the world you're watching from in the comments. Now, back to my story. My name is Eleanor Mitchell, and I suppose I should explain how I ended up here in a battle for my own home, cut off from my grandchildren, at war with the woman who married my only child. 28 years ago, my husband Robert and I bought this house. It was a fixer-upper in a neighborhood that was up and coming, which was real estate code for affordable if you don't mind peeling paint and questionable plumbing. Robert worked construction, and together we transformed that house into a home. We planted the oak tree in the front yard when our son Darren was born. We built the deck where he learned to ride his bike. We painted every room, installed every fixture, poured love into every corner. Robert died 6 years ago, a heart attack that took him far too soon. This house was all I had left of him. His workshop in the garage still smelled like sawdust. His coffee mug still sat in the cabinet. Some mornings I swear I could still hear his laugh echoing off the walls. When Darren brought Madison home 8 years ago, I wanted to love her. She was beautiful, confident, ambitious, everything my shy, sweet son wasn't. She worked in pharmaceutical sales, made good money, and seemed to adore Darren. I ignored the little warning signs, the way she corrected him in public, how she always seemed to be scrolling through her phone when he talked, the tight smile she gave me when I tried to share family stories. "She's just different from us, Mom," Darren would say whenever I gently raised a concern. "She's goal-oriented, driven. That's a good thing." They married quickly, a small, elegant wedding where Madison made all the decisions. I offered to help plan, to contribute, but she smiled that tight smile and said, "We've got it handled, Eleanor. You just show up and look nice." I should have seen it then. The pattern, the control. The grandchildren came within the first 3 years of marriage. Lily arrived first, a beautiful little girl with Darren's gentle eyes. Then Mason, 2 years later, a bundle of energy and laughter. I fell completely, utterly in love. Being a grandmother was everything I dreamed it would be. Better, even. At first, Madison let me be involved. I babysat twice a week. I attended every school event, every birthday party. I made Halloween costumes and Christmas cookies and filled my house with toys for their visits. But gradually, things began to change. It started with small comments. "The kids don't need so many sweets, Eleanor. We're trying to establish healthy eating habits." Or, "Maybe next time, check with us before buying them toys. We have a very specific approach to managing their expectations." The babysitting invitations became less frequent. "We found a wonderful daycare. They have a structured curriculum." The visits to my house dwindled. "The kids have so many activities now. Soccer, piano, tutoring. There's just no time." I tried to adapt. I asked before buying gifts. I brought healthy snacks. I worked around their schedule, driving across town at inconvenient times just to see Lily and Mason for an hour. And Madison's demands grew. It began with money. "The kids need new winter coats. Could you help us out?" I'd write a check. "Lily's teeth need braces. Insurance doesn't cover much." Another check. "We're struggling with the townhouse payment this month." Another check. I was living on Robert's life insurance and my teacher's pension. It wasn't much, but I wanted to help. I wanted to be the grandmother who showed up. who supported her family, but it was never enough. "You know, Eleanor," Madison said, one Sunday dinner about a year ago, "this house is really too big for you. Have you thought about downsizing? Think of what you could do with the equity." I'd laughed it off. "This is my home, dear. Robert and I built it together. I'm not ready to leave." Her smile had frozen. "Of course." I just thought, well, we're family, and family helps each other. That's when I noticed Darren had stopped meeting my eyes. Over the following months, the pressure intensified. Madison would casually mention how cramped their townhouse was, how the kids shared a room, how they couldn't have friends over. She'd tour me through Zillow listings. "Look at this condo, Eleanor. Perfect for a single woman, and so much easier to maintain." She began bringing contractors to Sunday dinners, just getting estimates for the kitchen renovation we could do, that you could do if you decided to update before selling. Selling. That word started appearing in every conversation. "Have you thought about your legacy, Eleanor? What you'll leave the kids? It's just so much yard work for you. Wouldn't you rather travel? We could take such good care of this place. It deserves a young family." But I held firm. This was my home, my memories, my choice. Then, 3 months ago, things escalated. I'd picked up Mason from school, a rare privilege Madison granted when she had a client meeting. He was chattering about his day when he suddenly said, "Grandma, are you really going to give Mommy your house?" My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What makes you think that?" "Sweetie, Mommy said you were going to give us the house because you're old and old people don't need big houses. She said we'd have a yard and I could get a dog." My heart sank. "Mason, this is Grandma's house. I'm not giving it away." He looked confused, then worried. "But Mommy said you promised." I tried to talk to Darren that evening. He was evasive, defensive. "Madison's just thinking about the future, Mom. About the kids. You have to understand her perspective." "I understand she's telling our grandson lies about my intentions," I said firmly. "She's not lying," he snapped with an edge I'd never heard before. "She's planning. She's being practical. Maybe you should try it sometime instead of being so stubborn." I barely recognized my son. That's when I knew Madison had him completely under her control. The next few months were a masterclass in manipulation. Madison began excluding me from family events. "Oh, we thought you'd be tired, or it was last minute, or I sent you an invitation, you didn't get it. That's so strange." Photos appeared on Facebook of family gatherings I knew nothing about. Lily's school play where I wasn't invited. Mason's birthday party that happened the week before the date they'd told me. When I confronted them, Madison's eyes filled with theatrical tears. "I feel like you're being hostile toward me, Eleanor. I'm trying so hard to include you, but you're always criticizing me. I don't know what else to do." And Darren, my sweet son, put his arm around his wife and said, "Mom, maybe you need to respect Madison's boundaries. Her boundaries. In my relationship with my own grandchildren, the isolation was systematic, surgical. Madison would cancel plans last minute, stop responding to my texts, tell the kids I was too busy to see them when I'd been waiting by the phone all week. I tried everything. I suggested family counseling. I wrote heartfelt letters. I apologized for things I hadn't even done, just to keep the peace. Nothing worked. 6 weeks ago, Madison played her trump card. I received a letter, a formal, typed letter delivered by mail, informing me that due to ongoing family conflicts and concern for the children's emotional well-being, my visitation with Lily and Mason would be temporarily suspended. I called Darren immediately, my hands shaking. "Did you know about this?" "Mom, we have to do what's best for the kids. I'm their grandmother. I love them. Madison feels disrespected. She says you undermine her parenting." "When? How? Give me one example." Silence. "Darren, please. I have to go, Mom. Madison needs me." He hung up. I didn't hear from them for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of checking my phone obsessively, driving past Lily's school, hoping for a glimpse, crying myself to sleep. When Madison finally called, her voice was sweet as poison. "Eleanor, we need to talk. Can I come by?" That's how we ended up in my kitchen on that December afternoon, with her ultimatum hanging in the air. sign over the house, or lose my grandchildren forever. After Madison stormed out, I sat in the gathering darkness of my living room, trying to think clearly through the grief and rage. I understood her game now. It had never been about family closeness or making me comfortable. From the moment she'd walked into our lives, she'd been calculating. She'd assessed what I had this house in a neighborhood that had gentrified beautifully over the decades, now worth nearly $800,000, and she'd developed a long-term plan to take it. The manipulation of my son, the systematic isolation from my grandchildren, the financial requests that made me appear like family helping family, all of it had been building to this moment. But Madison had made one critical mistake. She'd underestimated me. I'd spent 40 years teaching middle school English. I knew manipulation when I saw it. I knew how to spot a bully. And I knew that bullies relied on their victims' silence and shame to maintain power. I wasn't going to be silent anymore. That night, I began making calls. First, to Robert's old friend Jim, who'd become a real estate attorney. I explained the situation carefully, asking him what legal rights I had, what Madison could and couldn't do. "Eleanor," Jim said seriously, "she can't force you to sign over your house. That's your property. But she can deny you access to your grandchildren. Unless there's evidence of abuse or neglect, parents have the right to determine who sees their kids, even if it's purely manipulative. Even then, family court is tricky. You could petition for grandparents' rights, but it's expensive, emotionally draining, and not guaranteed to succeed, especially if your son supports her. So I have no recourse?" "I didn't say that." Jim's voice took on a thoughtful tone. "I said the legal route is difficult, but there are other approaches. Document everything, every conversation, every text, every instance of her behavior. You might need it." Next, I called my neighbor Patricia, who'd known Darren since he was in diapers. "I've been worried about you," Patricia said immediately. "I noticed you haven't had the grandkids over lately." I explained everything. The demands, the isolation, the ultimatum. "That woman," Patricia said with disgust. "I knew something was off about her. The way she looks at your house, it's like she's already measuring for curtains." "Patricia, I need to ask you something. You're friendly with Barbara Chen, right? The one who works for the school district?" "Yes, we're in the same book club." "Why?" "Madison mentioned putting the kids in private school next year, a very expensive private school. But Barbara would have access to their current school records, wouldn't she? Their file would show their home address, parent employment information." Patricia was quiet for a moment. "You're thinking Madison has been lying about their financial situation?" "I'm thinking," I said carefully, "that someone who can afford private school tuition probably doesn't need to extort their mother-in-law's house." "I'll make some calls," Patricia said. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a detective in my own life. I contacted Darren's college roommate, Marcus, who I'd stayed close with over the years. "Has Darren mentioned anything about money problems?" Madison made it sound like they were struggling. Marcus laughed. "Struggling? Man, Darren was just telling me about Madison's promotion. She's making 6 figures now. They're looking at investment properties." Investment properties. I dug through old emails, finding the requests for money. I printed them all out. For braces, but Lily's teeth were perfect. For townhouse payments, but public records showed they owned it outright. No mortgage. For car repairs, but Madison drove a brand new Lexus. Every request had been a lie. I contacted a private investigator, a woman named Sharon, who came highly recommended. "I need to know the truth about my daughter-in-law's finances. Can you help?" Sharon was thorough. Within a week, she had a report that made my blood boil. Madison and Darren's combined income was over $200,000 a year. They had healthy savings accounts. No debt. They'd just returned from a Caribbean cruise I knew nothing about. And Madison had recently opened a Pinterest board titled "My Dream Kitchen," filled with renovation ideas for a house with the exact layout of mine. She'd been planning this for years, but the most damning discovery came from an unexpected source. I received a Facebook message from a woman named Tracy. "Mrs. Mitchell, I don't know if you remember me. I was Madison's college roommate. I saw some concerning posts and thought you should know. Madison has a pattern. She did this to her own grandmother, convinced her to sign over her condo, then put her in a nursing home. I lost touch with Madison after that. But when I saw her posts about family complications and necessary boundaries, I got worried. Please be careful. I sat staring at that message for a long time. This wasn't just about greed. It was about power, control. Madison was a predator who used family bonds as weapons, and I was her current target, but I wasn't her previous victims. I wasn't going to surrender quietly. I began documenting everything, just as Jim advised. I kept a journal with dates, times, and direct quotes from every interaction. I saved every text message, every email. I started recording phone conversations, legal in my state with single-party consent. And I waited. Madison, confident in her power, didn't make me wait long. She called 2 weeks after her ultimatum, her voice syrupy sweet. "Eleanor, I think we got off on the wrong foot." I was stressed, and I said some things I didn't mean. "Why don't you come to Sunday dinner? The kids miss you." Every instinct screamed it was a trap. But I needed to see my grandchildren, and I needed to see what Madison was planning next. "I'd like that," I said carefully. Sunday dinner was a performance worthy of an Oscar. Madison had cooked my favorite foods. Lily and Mason attacked me with hugs, chattering about everything I'd missed. Darren was attentive, affectionate. For a moment, I let myself hope. Maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe. "So, Mom," Darren said as we settled in the living room, "Madison and I have been talking. We think we found a solution that works for everyone. Here it comes," I thought. Madison smiled warmly. "We know the house means a lot to you, and we'd never want to take that away. So we thought, what if we all lived together? A multi-generational household. You could have the first-floor bedroom, and we could take care of you as you get older. We'd cover all the expenses," Darren added. "Utilities, maintenance, everything. You'd just need to add us to the deed. For legal purposes." I looked at their eager faces and saw the trap clearly. Once their names were on the deed, I'd have no power. They could outvote me on any decision. They could force a sale. They could even claim I was mentally incompetent and have me removed from my own home. "That's a generous offer," I said slowly. "Can I think about it?" Madison's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course. But we'd need to know soon. We've been looking at other properties, and there's a timeline on those." The implied threat was clear. "Agree, or we'll leave you behind entirely." After dinner, I helped Madison in the kitchen while Darren played with the kids. She was washing dishes when she said, casually, "You know, Eleanor, you're not getting any younger. What if something happened to you? What if you fell, or had a health crisis? Wouldn't you feel better knowing Darren was right there to help?" "I'm 63, Madison, not 90. Still." She handed me a plate to dry. "Things can change so quickly." My grandmother thought she had years left. Then one day she couldn't manage stairs anymore. Couldn't remember to take her medications. It was sad, really. We had to make some hard decisions for her own good. The message was unmistakable. Agree to her terms, or she'd find other ways to take control. Claims of incompetence, health concerns. She'd paint me as a vulnerable elderly woman who needed protection. I dried the plate carefully, keeping my face neutral. "I appreciate your concern. I really do. But I'm perfectly healthy. For now," she said softly. When I left that evening, Lily hugged me tight. "You're coming to my recital next week, right, Grandma?" I looked at Madison, who smiled sweetly. "Of course she is. If she wants to." The conditional hung in the air like a noose. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to fight Madison on her terms. I wasn't going to argue, plead, or negotiate. I was going to do something she'd never expect. I was going to disappear. Not literally. But I was going to step back completely. Stop pursuing them. Stop begging for crumbs of time with my grandchildren. I was going to let Madison think she'd won. And while she was celebrating her victory, I was going to build my case. I called Jim again. "I want to petition for grandparents' rights. I know it's a long shot, but I want to try. Do you have evidence of a meaningful relationship with the children?" "Years of it. Photos, videos, cards they've made me, teachers who can testify I was involved in their lives." And evidence that the mother's preventing access without good reason? That's the tricky part. She claims it's about boundaries and respect. Start building documentation. Every denied visit, every cancelled plan. We need to show a pattern of alienation that isn't in the children's best interest. I also contacted a therapist who specialized in family estrangement. Dr. Reynolds was in her 50s, with kind eyes and a direct manner. What you're describing is parental alienation using grandchildren as weapons, she said during our first session. It's emotionally abusive not to you, but to your son. She's isolated him from his support system, rewritten his memories, convinced him that protecting her means rejecting you. Can he recover from it? If he wants to. But he has to see it first. And people like Madison are skilled at maintaining the illusion. She probably love bombs him when he starts to question, makes him feel like her approval is worth everything. So what do? You maintain your integrity. You document the truth, and you wait for the crack in her facade. Because it will come. People like Madison always overplay their hand eventually. I spent the next month in strategic silence. I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't show up unannounced. I let Madison believe I'd given up. Meanwhile, I was busy. I gathered every photo of my grandchildren. I had thousands of them from births, birthdays, holidays, ordinary afternoons. I compiled videos of them playing in my yard, baking cookies in my kitchen, reading books curled up on my couch. I collected artwork they'd made me, cards they'd written. I contacted their former teachers, their pediatrician, their swim coach, anyone who could testify I'd been an active, loving presence in their lives. I built a timeline documenting Madison's escalating demands and my responses, the money I'd given them, the compromises I'd made, the hoops I'd jumped through, and I documented her lies. The financial struggles contradicted by their actual income, the claims that I was interfering when I'd bent over backward to respect her boundaries, the alienation tactics disguised as concern. Sharon, the private investigator, continued digging. She found Madison's old blog from before her marriage posts dripping with materialism and ambition, including one that said, "Marry rich or marry someone whose family is rich. Either way, you shouldn't have to work forever." She found Tracy, Madison's college roommate, who was willing to provide a written statement about what happened to Madison's grandmother, the pattern of manipulation, the isolation, the eventual takeover of her property. Most damning of all, Sharon obtained records showing that Madison had consulted with 3 different attorneys about elder care and property transfer issues 6 months ago, long before her ultimatum to me. This had been premeditated, calculated. I was never family to Madison. I was a mark. 6 weeks into my silence, Darren called. "Mom, are you okay? We haven't heard from you." "I'm fine, honey. Just giving you all space like Madison wanted." She didn't mean. "I mean, you can still call. You can still see the kids." "Can I?" I asked gently. Because last time we spoke, there were a lot of conditions attached to that. Silence. Then, "Have you thought about our offer? About the house?" There it was. This wasn't a call out of concern. It was a business follow-up. "I'm still thinking." I lied. "Well, don't take too long. Madison's getting impatient. And you know how she gets when..." He stopped abruptly. "When she doesn't get what she wants." He'd almost said it. "I'll be in touch," I said and hung up. 2 weeks later, Madison made her move. She posted on Facebook, "Heartbroken today. Sometimes you have to make difficult decisions to protect your children from toxic relationships, even when it's family. Praying for strength and peace." The comments poured in. Friends and relatives who didn't know the full story offered sympathy, condemned the mysterious toxic person, praised Madison's strength. She was controlling the narrative, painting herself as the victim and me as the villain. I didn't respond, didn't defend myself, didn't engage. Instead, I screenshot the post and added it to my file. Then I got a call from Lily's school. "Mrs. Mitchell, this is Principal Hartwell. I wanted to reach out because we've noticed Lily has seemed withdrawn lately. She used to talk about you all the time. But when I asked if you were coming to her school play, she got very quiet and said you couldn't come anymore. Is everything all right?" My heart broke and soared simultaneously. Lily was hurting, but someone had noticed. It's complicated, I said carefully, but I would love to come to her play if I'm invited. Let me talk to her parents, Principal Hartwell said. There was something in her tone that made me think she suspected more than she was saying. Madison called that evening, fury barely concealed under a veneer of politeness. I don't appreciate you going behind my back to the school. I didn't. Principal Hartwell called me, because you've been manipulating Lily, making her feel bad. I haven't spoken to Lily in 6 weeks, Madison. Not since your ultimatum. I never. You're twisting things. Am I? Because I have a recording of our conversation in my kitchen. Would you like me to play it back? Silence. Then, her voice dropped to something cold and dangerous. You're recording conversations? That's illegal. Single-party consent state. Perfectly legal. You're really going to fight me on this? You're going to lose, Eleanor. You have no legal standing. Those kids are mine and Darren's, not yours. Then why are you so worried? I could hear her breathing hard. You have 1 week to sign over the house. 1 week. Or I'm filing a restraining order claiming you're harassing us. I'll make sure you never see Lily or Mason again, even from a distance. Do what you need to do, Madison. I hung up. 3 days later, I received the restraining order paperwork. Madison claimed I'd been engaging in obsessive behavior, making unwanted contact, and causing emotional distress to the children. It was all lies. Provable lies. I had phone records, text messages, timestamps showing I'd respected her boundaries completely. But it still hurt to see it in legal language, to see my son's name on the document, supporting her lies. Jim was furious. This is harassment. We can fight this easily. Good, I said, because I'm ready to fight. I filed a counter-petition for grandparents' rights, including every piece of evidence I'd gathered. Photos, videos, testimonies, the financial records proving Madison's lies, Tracy's statement about the pattern of behavior with Madison's own grandmother, and then I did something Madison never expected. I went public, not in a messy Facebook rant, nothing that could be dismissed as emotional hysteria. Instead, I wrote a calm, factual blog post titled, When Family Becomes Extortion. I didn't use names. I didn't violate any privacy laws. I simply told my story, a grandmother being systematically alienated from her grandchildren because she wouldn't surrender her property to financial manipulation. I shared it in online support groups for grandparents' rights, in forums about parental alienation, in communities discussing elder financial abuse. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of people reached out with similar stories, grandparents who'd been cut off for refusing to provide endless financial support, elderly parents manipulated into signing over property. The pattern was depressingly common, but the sharing also connected me with resources, legal aid organizations, advocacy groups, a pro bono attorney who specialized in grandparents' rights cases and was so outraged by Madison's tactics that she offered to assist Jim. Within days, my blog post had been shared thousands of times. News outlets started picking up the story. A local reporter called, asking to interview me. I said yes. The interview was tasteful, focused on the legal and emotional complexities of grandparents' rights. The reporter, a woman who'd experienced her own family estrangement, handled it sensitively. But the headline the next day was explosive. Local grandmother fights back against property extortion, disguised as family drama. That's when everything changed. Madison's employer saw the article. While no names were mentioned, enough details were specific that people in their social circle connected the dots. Her company, which prided itself on ethics and family values, launched a quiet investigation into employee conduct. Darren's boss, who knew me from community events over the years, reached out. Eleanor, I saw the news. I had no idea. Is there anything I can do? The court date for the restraining order hearing arrived. I walked in with Jim, the pro bono attorney Melissa, and a folder of evidence 3 inches thick. Madison walked in with a lawyer whose aggressive reputation preceded him and an air of absolute confidence. She wasn't confident for long. The judge reviewed the evidence methodically. My phone records showing I hadn't contacted them in weeks. The recordings of Madison's ultimatums. The financial records proving her lies about struggling financially. When Madison's lawyer tried to paint me as obsessive and unstable, Melissa calmly introduced testimonies from my neighbors, my therapist, Lily's principal, and even the grocery store clerk who'd known me for 20 years, all describing me as kind, rational, and heartbroken. Then came Tracy's testimony about Madison's pattern of behavior with her own grandmother. The judge's expression grew increasingly stern. "Mrs. Madison Mitchell," the judge said, her voice sharp, "this court does not look kindly on false restraining orders filed as leverage in property disputes. The evidence suggests this petition is retaliatory and without merit. Your Honor, I was protecting my children. By lying under oath about the petitioner's behavior? By denying your children contact with a grandmother who, by all accounts, had a loving, healthy relationship with them?" The judge's gaze was withering. "Petition denied. Furthermore, I'm ordering a temporary visitation schedule while the grandparents' rights petition is evaluated. You will allow Mrs. Eleanor Mitchell supervised visits with her grandchildren, starting immediately." Madison's face went white. "You can't." "I can, and I have. Next case." In the hallway, Madison cornered me, Darren hovering uncertainly behind her. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You think you've won, but you've just made everything worse. Those kids are going to hate you for what you've put this family through." I looked at my son, really looked at him, saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. He looked like a man trapped in a cage, defending his captor. "Darren," I said softly, "I love you. I always will. And when you're ready to remember who you were before her, I'll be here." Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, recognition. But Madison's hand on his arm tightened, and the moment passed. "Let's go," she snapped, pulling him away. I went home and cried, not from sadness, but from relief, from exhaustion, from the bittersweet victory of winning a battle while the war raged on. The supervised visits began the following week. A court-appointed supervisor, a warm woman named Denise, met me at a family center where I could see Lily and Mason for 2 hours every Saturday. The first visit was heartbreaking. The kids were cautious, clearly coached about what to say and do. "Mommy says you're mad at us," Lily said quietly, not meeting my eyes. I knelt down to her level. "Sweetheart, I could never be mad at you. I love you so much. I've missed you every single day. Mommy says you tried to steal our house. The poison Madison had planted. But I stayed calm. Grandma's house is Grandma's house, just like your house is your house. Nobody's stealing anything. Sometimes grown-ups disagree about things, but that doesn't change how much I love you." Slowly, cautiously, they began to warm up. We read books, played games, drew pictures. Mason showed me his loose tooth. Lily told me about her best friend's birthday party. For 2 hours, we were just grandma and grandkids again. When Denise said time was up, both kids hugged me tight. "Can we come back next week?" Mason asked. "Absolutely," I promised. After they left, Denise pulled me aside. "I want you to know I've supervised a lot of these visits. Those kids love you. Whatever's happening in that household, it hasn't changed how they feel about you. Thank you," I whispered. The visits continued weekly. Each one, the kids relaxed a bit more. Started asking when they could come to my house again. Started mentioning things Madison had told them that contradicted reality. "Mommy said you didn't want to come to my birthday party. Mommy said you were sick and couldn't see us. Mommy said you were too busy." I never contradicted Madison directly. I just said gently, "That's not quite what happened, but we're together now, and that's what matters." Denise documented everything, every lie exposed, every moment of genuine connection. Meanwhile, the grandparents' rights case proceeded. Melissa was building an airtight argument. I had established a meaningful relationship with my grandchildren over years of consistent involvement. That relationship had been severed, not for the children's welfare, but as punishment for refusing to surrender property. The abrupt termination of contact was harmful to the children's emotional well-being. We had expert witnesses, child psychologists who explained the impact of sudden grandparent alienation. Teachers who testified about the kids' changed behavior after I was cut off. Even Patricia's friend Barbara from the school district provided documentation showing the family's actual financial status contradicted Madison's claims of hardship. Madison's attorney fought hard. He tried to paint me as controlling, overbearing, unable to respect parental authority, but every argument fell apart under scrutiny. I had respected every boundary, met every demand, until the demands became extortion. The judge assigned a guardian ad litem, an attorney representing the children's interests. She interviewed Lily and Mason, Madison and Darren, teachers, neighbors. Her report, when filed, was damning for Madison. While the children love both parents, there is evidence of coaching and manipulation regarding the grandmother. The children expressed confusion about why they couldn't see their grandmother, with their explanations contradicting documented facts. The sudden termination of a loving, stable relationship appears to be the result of an adult conflict over property, not legitimate child welfare concerns. The recommendation: restore regular, unsupervised visitation and consider joint counseling for the family. When I received the news, I sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where Madison had issued her ultimatum 9 months ago, and felt something shift. Not triumph, not vindication, just a quiet, solid certainty. I had fought for what mattered, for my grandchildren, for my dignity, for the truth, and I had won. The final hearing was scheduled for late spring. I arrived early, wearing the dress Robert had always said made me look strong. Jim and Melissa flanked me like guardian angels. Madison and Darren sat across the aisle. She looked immaculate, as always, but there was a tightness around her eyes. Darren looked ill. The judge reviewed all the evidence, all the testimonies, all the reports. This court finds that Mrs. Eleanor Mitchell did establish a bonded and meaningful relationship with her grandchildren over a period of years. This court further finds that the termination of that relationship was not motivated by legitimate child welfare concerns, but rather by a property dispute initiated by the mother, Mrs. Madison Mitchell. The evidence of financial misrepresentation, emotional manipulation, and parental alienation is troubling. While this court respects parental authority, it cannot condone using children as leverage in property disputes. Therefore, I am granting Mrs. Eleanor Mitchell's petition for grandparents' rights. Visitation will be expanded to include alternating weekends, 1 weekday afternoon per week, and shared holidays. This is not supervised visitation, Mrs. Mitchell has demonstrated she poses no risk to these children. Furthermore, I am ordering family counseling for all parties. These children deserve to have both their parents and their grandmother in their lives without being caught in adult conflicts. Madison's face crumpled. Not in sadness, in rage. This is ridiculous. She's manipulated everyone. She's... Mrs. Mitchell, the judge interrupted sharply. I suggest you carefully consider your next words. This court has been very patient with provably false statements. Don't test that patience further. Madison's mouth snapped shut. After the hearing, I walked out into the spring sunshine. Birds were singing. Flowers were blooming. The world felt lighter. Jim hugged me. You did it, Eleanor. We did it. I corrected. Melissa smiled. I'm glad I could help. Your strength through all this was remarkable. I had good reason to be strong, I said. 2 of them, actually. Small, loud reasons who need their grandmother. As I drove home, my phone rang. Darren. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mom. His voice was rough, strained. Can we talk? Just you and me? Of course. Can I come over? To the house? When? Now. 20 minutes later, my son stood in my living room. He looked around like he was seeing it for the first time in years. I remember when Dad built that bookshelf, he said, pointing. I was 7. He let me help sand it. You were so proud of yourself. He sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. I'm so sorry, Mom. For everything. For all of it. I sat beside him, careful not to touch him yet. What changed? The judge. The evidence. Seeing it all laid out like that. He looked up, and his eyes were wet. I knew Madison could be intense, driven, but I told myself that was just her personality, that you were being too sensitive. that I needed to support my wife. She's very good at what she does, I said quietly. She's been lying to me too, about the money, about what you said, about why you weren't around. I found emails between her and her attorney from months ago, planning how to get you to sign over the house. Before any of this conflict happened, she'd been planning it all along. I know. I thought I was protecting my family, my wife, my kids, but I was just... He broke down. I was helping her hurt everyone, including Lily and Mason. They've been so upset, so confused. And I just kept telling them what Madison said to tell them. I put my arm around my son. My boy, you were manipulated by someone very skilled at manipulation. That's not your fault. It is my fault. You're my mom. I should have believed you. I should have seen what she was doing. You see it now. That's what matters. We sat there for a long time, my son crying on my shoulder the way he hadn't since he was small. I don't know what to do, he finally said. She's my wife, the mother of my children, but I don't know if I can trust her anymore. I don't know if I even know who she really is. Those are answers you'll have to find on your own, I said gently. But whatever you decide, whatever happens, I'm here. I'm always here, even after everything I did. You're my son. I love you. That doesn't just stop. He hugged me tightly. I've missed you, Mom. I've missed you too, sweetheart. The weeks that followed were complicated. Darren didn't leave Madison, not right away, but he started setting boundaries. Started questioning, started seeing the patterns. Madison fought it every step. More tears, more manipulations, more threats, but something had broken in her power structure. Darren had seen behind the curtain. My first unsupervised weekend with Lily and Mason was pure joy. We made pancakes for breakfast, painted rocks for the garden, watched movies cuddled on the couch. Mason helped me plant tomatoes in Grandpa's old garden beds. Lily and I baked cookies using Robert's mother's recipe. I missed your house, Grandma, Lily said as we tucked them into the guest room, their room now, with fresh sheets and their favorite stuffed animals. I missed having you in it, I said, kissing her forehead. Mommy was wrong, wasn't she? About you not wanting us. I chose my words carefully. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. What matters is that we love each other. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, sweetheart. 2 months later, Darren moved out of the townhouse. Not into my house, he got his own apartment. I need space to think, he told me, to figure out who I am without her voice in my head constantly. Madison tried everything. Love bombing, threats, promises to change, but the facade had cracked too deeply. 6 months after that, they divorced. The custody arrangement gave Darren primary custody, with Madison having visitation rights. The court noted her concerning pattern of manipulative behavior and ordered continued counseling. Madison moved to another city. I heard through the grapevine she'd remarried quickly, a widower with substantial assets. I hoped his family was watching out for him. As for me, I still live in my house, Robert's house, our house, the one we built together, filled with memories and love. Lily and Mason visit every other weekend. Darren comes for Sunday dinners. We're healing, slowly, the 3 of us 4, counting the memories of Robert that still fill every corner. I never signed over my house, never surrendered to Madison's extortion, but I gained something much more valuable than property. I gained my self-respect, my voice, my refusal to be silent in the face of abuse, and I gained time, precious, irreplaceable time with my grandchildren. Was it worth it? The legal bills, the emotional toll, the stress, every single second. Because when Madison screamed at me to sign over my house or never see my grandchildren again, I smiled. I smiled because I knew something she didn't. Love isn't leverage. Family isn't currency. And some things like dignity, like integrity, like the bonds between grandmother and grandchildren can't be bought, sold, or extorted. They can only be protected. And I would protect mine until my last breath. Madison thought she was clever. She thought she'd found an easy mark, a lonely widow who'd do anything to stay connected to her grandchildren. She was wrong. I wasn't just a lonely widow. I was a mother, a grandmother, A woman who'd built a life from nothing, who'd survived loss, who'd raised a son with love and strength, and I was done being nice to bullies. So when she gave me that ultimatum in my kitchen, when she threw down that gauntlet and waited for me to fold, I smiled, because I knew exactly what I was going to do. I was going to fight, and I was going to win. Not the house, not the property, not the financial victory, but something far more important. My family, my truth, my life. The life Robert and I built together, the one I'd defend with everything I had. Madison wanted to take my house. Instead, she lost everything. And I learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the quietest people make the loudest stands. Sometimes the gentlest souls have the strongest backbones. And sometimes, when someone tries to destroy you, the best revenge is simply refusing to break. I didn't break. I bent, yes. I hurt. I cried. I questioned everything, but I didn't break. And now, on Sunday afternoons, when I hear Lily's laughter in the backyard and Mason's footsteps thundering through the halls, when I watch my son smile again, really smile for the first time in years, when I sit in Robert's chair and feel the peace of a life reclaimed, I know exactly what I fought for. And I know, without question, it was worth every battle. My house still stands, but more importantly, so do I. Thank you for listening to my story, and thank you for being here.